Mia Goth is hands down one of my favorite actresses working in Hollywood today. She steals absolutely every single scene she's in, no matter the role, no matter the circumstance, no matter the context. Her performances are just that magnetic. Every Mia Goth character is a transformative and transcendent bundle of pure fun and chaos, at least the ones I've seen thus far. And for how talented she clearly is, I expect all of her roles to be similarly captivating. And that's what this video is about today. Mia Goth is one of those artists whose talents draw you into them like an addiction. Once you've had a taste of their work, you simply cannot stop craving more. And quite frankly, that's what happened to me and quite a lot of people back in 2022, Mia Goth's breakout year. I've followed Mia Goth's career for quite a while now, but it wasn't until 2022 when she became the popular rising star she is today. Last year, she starred in Ti West's fantastic A24 horror film X and its follow-up prequel Pearl, where she played the desperate Maxine Minx and the brilliantly unhinged titular Pearl. I'm gonna talk more about those movies later on in the video, but these two films are what Mia Goth has now become known for. An indie horror darling with a penchant for excellent screams, emotionally intense performances, and ridiculously fun violence. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. She can show you herself.
Am I good at screaming? I think I am good at screaming. I can scream for you.
Let me hear you.
Wait, let me do it one more time.
X and Pearl have made Mia Goth into an icon, an internet sensation, and an object of a TikTok stan's unhealthy obsession. She is your prototypical it girl, and, of course, as she so delicately puts it, Mia is likely set to continue this exciting and fiery trajectory with the upcoming X and Pearl sequel Maxine, followed by her casting in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein and Marvel's Blade. But although she's known for her rather unhinged performances lately, Mia Goth has actually built an interesting and diverse filmography over the past decade. She's more than just a one-trick pony. And I'm here to explore just what has made her into the exciting and popular actress she is today. So, in this video, I'm gonna break down each and every film Mia Goth has been in thus far, taking a particular look at how her nuanced performances have helped shape and create these memorable characters she's embodied over the past 10 years. But to be clear, this video isn't coming from the perspective of a trained actor, so I'm not here to judge the actual minutia of Mia's acting skills. And honestly, this video is just to have a bit of fun on this channel. Don't try to take it too seriously. I know some people aren't Mia Goth fans, and that's fine, I understand. But I personally think that Mia Goth is absolutely incredible, and I simply want to share her talents with as many people as possible. So I hope this video gets people to pull up their own Mia Goth film and experience it for themselves. You decide whether you like her work or not. I'll be looking at 12 films in particular, and we'll follow them in chronological order in accordance to their release date. For each movie, there will be a brief spoiler warning before each section that'll warn you on what elements are being spoiled for that particular film. 3 movies from her filmography are being left out in this video. Everest, which is because she has an extremely minor role in the film, and Magpie and the Staggering Girl, which is because they're both short films. No hate to the short films, by the way. They're just a bit harder to access than the rest of these movies. If I could, I'd love to take a look at more projects involving Mia. But let us finally begin with one of those projects. Let us start with Mia Goth's debut film role, the controversial erotic art film, *Νန့ω𝞀μανιάκ.
The longer I watched the poor girl with the deformed ear, the more repulsive I found the whole plan.
Lars von Trier's *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ is a long and epic saga split into 2 volumes totaling a runtime of 325 minutes for the director's cut. To say that it's a provocative film would be an understatement. Considering the subject matter elicited by the title, it's no surprise that this movie is filled with some extremely graphic imagery. Not to mention the fact that it's written and directed by Lars von Trier, a notoriously controversial artist well known for making intense and shocking films. But if you were to ask me to describe *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ to you in just a few words, graphic and shocking wouldn't actually be at the top of that list. I'd probably tell you it's hella fucking long, but joking aside, I found *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ to be a rather twistedly beautiful film, with some interesting stylistic choices and thought-provoking themes. So to reduce this movie to just its shocking elements would be rather unfair to its artistry. But for a video that's about Mia Goth, it's impossible to talk about and dissect every piece of this movie without creating my own 325-minute long epic. So keep in mind that my discussion of *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ isn't to identify and analyze every theme, but rather to give you simplified context on how Mia Goth enhances the experience of this film. And don't get me wrong, this is a Charlotte Gainsbourg and Stacey Martin dominated film, 2 gargantuan talents in their own right. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be talking primarily about Mia Goth, even when her role is rather minor in some of these movies. And this is one of those movies where her role is fairly minor. However, I would call this a role that's minor in screen time, but not in impact. Mia Goth's character actually plays a major role in tying this film's themes together. For context, *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ is about a woman named Jo who self-identifies as a nymphomaniac. Not as a sex addict, but specifically as a woman who has found a positive connotation with the word nymphomaniac and how it describes her life and identity. The film follows Jo in her conversation with a man named Seligman as she recounts her erotic experiences throughout her life. Seligman, an educated yet sheltered man, spends most of the movie analyzing Jo's stories and offers his insight on her behavior, often finding ways to moralize her actions from his own perspective. Before I talk more deeply about the film, I do want to acknowledge that examining female sexuality through the lens of a man is inherently limited in perspective. So whether we're talking about Lars von Trier's themes or my own thoughts on this movie, it must be noted that this analysis is rooted not in authority over women's issues, but rather in exploration of those topics. Anyway, rest assured, *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ is generally a heavy-handed film critical of our male-dominated, oppressive world. It criticizes how this male-dominant culture controls women and our view of how they should act. Because at the end of it all, *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ is a story of a woman seeking to understand herself and the pressured shame that comes with living an untraditional lifestyle. *Νཻω𝞀μανιάκ positions itself as a sex-positive film that explores non-normative sexual and gendered behavior. It's a film all about sexual liberation and the empowerment people can find in not seeing sex as a shameful act. Rather, it's a lifestyle choice that no one else has any control or say over. Jo's body is her own in this film. What she does with it is up to her and no one else. Of course, that doesn't mean that people don't try to control what Jo does with her body. They absolutely do. Even other women actively contribute to this culture of control. Jo herself isn't innocent of this cultural participation in controlling women. And that's where Mia Goth's character finally comes in. You know, having never watched this movie beforehand, I had no idea when the hell Mia Goth was going to show up, or for how long. So when Willem Dafoe's character started describing someone that sounded even remotely like her, shit kind of felt like that scene in Avengers Endgame, when all those portals started showing up and all our favorite heroes finally arrived to the fight. But in this case, Mia Goth's sudden and long-awaited appearance is a bit darker than superheroes coming to the rescue. In the last third of the movie, Jo shares with Seligman how her lack of place in normal society guided her to a life of organized crime in her late adulthood. She becomes a debt collector, using nefarious means learned from her many years of experience with men, sex, and sadism. As she grows older, however, her boss Elle encourages her to groom a successor, a young, vulnerable girl named P, played by Mia Goth. P is an interesting character in the sense that despite her rough past, she serves as the rebirth of womanhood and innocence in the film. She contrasts heavily to the severe hurt and trauma Jo has went through. At this point in *Nymphomaniac*, Jo can no longer have sex, she's an older woman, and she's battered from years of abuse, which culminates in Elle asking her to groom P. Jo is treated like many women are as they get older, discarded for their age for having a perceptively lesser value compared to younger women. And Mia Goth's performance as P is actually quite powerful here, especially knowing how her future acting roles are played. Mia Goth's characteristic high-pitched voice and lilt is pivotal to her roles, so it was a surprise to me to hear how low-pitched her voice was as P. It added to P's sense of innocence. Mia Goth plays P as an extremely meek, guarded, insecure, and hurt young girl, and her comparatively low-pitched voice helps show how understated and reserved she really is. This sense of youthful innocence is a major part of *Nymphomaniac*. And I don't mean innocence in the sense of being pure and sinless, by the way. I mean innocence in the sense of sexual innocence. P shortly thereafter introduces Jo to female sexual relationships, another non-normative sexual lifestyle that mirrors Jo's own journey from sexual innocence to sexual maturity. And that's why Mia Goth's P is a pivotal character. She ties a lot of the film's themes together by exploring sex and sexuality, innocence and maturity, and even control and manipulation. And Mia Goth plays her perfectly. Her character's descent into corruption even becomes a glimpse into the Mia Goth we know and love today. Even in Mia's first role, she's able to play a character who looks as if she can crack at any moment and go ballistic, even under what first appears to be a playful exterior. There's a scene in which she threatens a man during a debt collection raid, and you can already see that Mia Goth may have been born to play unhinged characters. So let us continue forward past *Nymphomaniac*. Let us see just what her next character is all about.
Can we have more?
The Survivalist is a post-apocalyptic suspense film highly reminiscent of 2009's The Road, with both films focusing heavily on the bleak survival elements of their respective worlds. It's a brutal film filled with desperate choices. In it, people are dangerous, distrustful, and selfish. All markers of excellent survival instincts. That's why everyone in this movie just looks threatening. Every character has an air about them that just tells you they know how to survive in these circumstances. And that goes for Mia Goth's character Milia too. Just like P from *Νန့ο𝞀繫σο𝘢𝑛i𝘢𝑗, Milia is similarly quiet and understated, yet nevertheless holding back a darkness hidden behind her cold and angry eyes. Milia isn't as intense and flamboyant as Mia Goth's latest roles have been, and that plays heavily to her advantage in The Survivalist. Because despite what some people might say about Mia Goth's unique aesthetic, it's not a secret that she's a conventionally attractive woman with modeling experience, which is something that someone might criticize as not fitting in a harsh survival film. So it's to Mia Goth's credit that she's able to take her look and transform it into a believable character that appears fully capable of surviving in such a grim setting. And part of that is owed heavily to her now iconic, almost translucent eyebrows. Mia uses them to great effect. They accentuate the coldness in Milia's eyes, while making it almost impossible to read her true thoughts and feelings. That's why I find Mia Goth's performance in this movie to be perfect. She represents what it takes to be a survivor. And she does this all by portraying an impenetrable exterior that turns Milia from what might at first glance seem like mere eye candy to something far, far more dangerous. That's not to say that Milia doesn't use her sex appeal to get what she needs in this movie. She absolutely does. But that's an aspect of Milia's characters that I found to be more indicative of her survival instincts as opposed to her inward desire for sex. Just like P from *Nymphomaniac, it's not her beauty that makes her interesting. It's the sense that she might at any moment turn against you. And I think a lot of Mia Goth's strengths lie in that pure, unhinged energy, whether her characters actually release it or not. So the question is now, does she carry that energy with her in each and every one of her films? Well, to find out, let's move forward once again and take a look at our third movie in Mia Goth's filmography.
Did it hurt?
Can't remember.
Better that way.
I saw you before. You a patient here? She's just so much younger than everyone else.
A Cure for Wellness is a neo-gothic psychological horror film that follows Dane DeHaan's character Lockhart in his journey to retrieve his company's CEO from a mysterious wellness center in the Swiss Alps. Lockhart, despite being a rather uptight and rude Wall Street stockbroker, quickly sees past the idyllic and clinically clean facade of the wellness center. During his involuntary stay, he discovers that things aren't quite what they seem here. Staff members dose themselves with a mysterious liquid, and patients act cryptic about why they never want to leave this place. It's a very Dracula-esque film with shades of Shutter Island. Though, I admit that it's probably a bit unfair to compare this film to those two properties, considering that A Cure for Wellness never quite reaches their heights. Nevertheless, I think that A Cure for Wellness is surprisingly underrated. It's a gorgeous movie with beautiful cinematography. I found myself rather enamored with a lot of the creative shots in this film. It does such a great job at making everything feel grand. There are a ton of wide shots that play into the movie's themes of power and control, and this really helps later scenes feel almost claustrophobic and trapped, much like the characters are. This carefully calculated cinematography, in conjunction with its creepy visuals and haunting performances, manages to create this interesting concoction of gothic terror that I found to be the movie's greatest strength. Because it's this vibe that makes the film work as well as it does. I mean, for anyone who loves horror, the sanitarium aesthetic just goes crazy. Some of the best horror vibes have come from sanitarium, hospital, or asylum settings. For example, the creepy psychiatric facility in 2013's Outlast, or Silent Hill's infamous Brookhaven Hospital. A Cure for Wellness is kind of backrooms coded too. This movie obviously came out way before the backrooms was ever a thing or before anyone cared about liminal spaces, but it's the best way for me to describe how oppressive this film really feels. And, unsurprisingly, Mia Goth is a key piece in shaping this film's vibe and aesthetic. Her look and feel is perfect for the eerie tone and dark mood this movie tries to create. It would be rude to say that Mia looks like a sickly Victorian child in this, but she kinda does, and I think that's on purpose. Her character Hannah is a sheltered girl with a heavy air of mystery about her. She's lived at the wellness center her whole life, and she too drinks from the mysterious blue bottles that the staff does. The head doctor, Dr. Vollmer, also promises her that she'll be freed when she's better. But just like the other patients, it's unknown what, if any, illness Hannah has. And again, I think Mia Goth plays Hannah perfectly in this film. But rather than hiding a sense of unhinged energy within her, Mia hides a different kind of energy in this character. Hannah always seems like she's hiding something from Lockhart. In fact, it even seems as if she's hiding something from herself at times. And what that energy is truth. To avoid spoiling the ending of the movie, I'll just say that Hannah's character is a consistent enigma. We don't know her motivations, her past, or quite frankly, much about her until much later in the movie. And Mia's ability to obfuscate her character's emotions, intentions, desires, and history is second to none. Her lackadaisical movements, gentle facial expressions, cautious manner of speaking, and muted mannerisms all work together to establish Hannah's mysterious background. Not to mention her clear sense of innocence. And like most early Mia Goth films where she plays a character meant to portray innocence, I think that Mia is equally as proficient at portraying her loss of innocence. Her movements become harsher, her facial expressions become sharper, and her speech turns a little bit more explosive and shaken. So it isn't that Mia Goth is solely a master at being unhinged. Rather, she's a master at shifting and controlling the often impulsive emotions of her characters, and A Cure for Wellness helps prove that. But with 9 more films to look at, let's see just how much this pattern holds up. Marrowbone is a bit of a complex film to define genre-wise. It's part psychological horror, part mystery, and part drama. A blend that usually lends itself to a slower, more cerebral experience. And it certainly is on the slower side. I actually enjoy that the movie didn't jump straight into its horror elements. It starts with a more somber, nostalgic feeling, which was an excellent mood setter that set the tone for what this movie was really about. Because I wouldn't describe this film as terrifying by any means. its scares are actually quite few and far between. But its underlying themes about trauma are chilling, tragic, and sad. And the climax of this film is actually extremely disturbing. But before I give more context about the film, I'd first like to mention how surprised I was at how stacked this cast was, despite having never heard of this movie before. And I've seen some obscure shit in my lifetime. Marrowbone is about the titular Marrowbone family, a set of siblings who relocate with their sick mother from England to rural Maine. Their mother, Rose, urges them to leave their harsh past behind, and for good reason too. But that reason isn't quite revealed until later in the film. George McKay plays Jack, the eldest Marrowbone child. His mother, on her deathbed, urges him to delay the news of her death for a few more months until he turns 21, which would allow him to legally care for his siblings and make sure they stick together. Mia Goth plays Jane, the next eldest Marrowbone child. While her family remains in hiding from whatever it is they were running from, she becomes the homeschool teacher for their youngest brother Sam. She isn't quite the protective leader Jack is, but she's reasonable, thoughtful, and intelligent. Charlie Heaton plays Billy, the hot-headed, impulsive younger brother of his more careful and cautious elder siblings. Lastly, Anya Taylor-Joy plays Allie, a friendly neighbor to the Marrowbones who quickly becomes close friends with the Marrowbone family. She later enters into a relationship with Jack, though he remains closed off about his past. This set of 5 characters form the heart of Marrowbone, and each give a rather impassioned and powerful performance for their respective characters. Anyway, to give more context about the film, it's revealed pretty early on that the family gets found by whoever it is they were running from, and this person appears to be extremely dangerous. We don't get to see what happens on that day, however, until much later in the film. All we know is that the siblings have dealt with the individual, and that they've hidden all the mirrors in the house to protect themselves from the supposed ghost that now haunts the home. Now, I don't want to spoil the movie any further in case you want to watch it, as part of the fun of this movie is its slowly unraveling mysteries. So I'll just say that Marrowbone is strongest when examining how the oppressive weight of trauma, and its corresponding feelings of guilt and helplessness, can often destroy and disintegrate a person. But with the right support, confrontation of that trauma can lead to acceptance and closure. That's why the Marrowbone family dynamic is the heart of this film. And it's to this film's massive benefit that it has such a talented cast to make it work. And, of course, Mia Goth plays a major role in making that happen. In this movie, Mia Goth's character Jane is quite different from her previous roles. Jane is much more sensitive and emotional in contrast to the more suppressed and restrained characters Mia has played previously. And thus, Mia lets those emotions breathe a certain life into her character. It's always apparent when Jane is regretful, anxious, sad, happy, or any other emotion you can think of. Jane hides nothing from her family. Jane isn't guarded like P was in *Nymphomaniac, nor is she weathered down like Millia was in The Survivalist. And she certainly isn't sheltered from the horrors of life just like Hannah was in A Cure for Wellness. And despite Mia Goth's previous portrayals of innocence, Jane is a character that exudes maturity in a way that's indicative of the harsh life she's been through. It's a great detail that Mia successfully handles, as it contributes to the theme of trauma and how it's affected this family. And I think it's with Marrowbone where Mia Goth's emotional flexibility truly begins to shine. But Marrowbone, as with A Cure for Wellness before it, is only just a small taste of Mia Goth's capabilities specifically as a horror icon. And as we move forward past this point, we'll start to see how Mia's talents for emotional control and expression are utilized in more explicit and high-energy contexts. which is where her career has thrived. Like all great actors, Mia Goth is able to shape and manipulate her characters through the way her emotions inhabit them. And as we'll see in the next movie, that ability is ripe for a horrifying, bone-chilling performance.
I'd like you to dance Olga's part. Is everyone happy with that? Okay. Good. No. Music off, please. One moment. Okay, so, and 1 and 2.
Suspiria is a supernatural horror film inspired by the 1977 cult classic of the same name. I say inspired rather than remade, as Luca Guadagnino's 2018 film is only loosely based off of the original movie, and it should be recognized not as a poorly made ripoff, but as a love letter, and as a unique and radically different approach to the original film's ideas. And honestly, I have no idea where to start with this movie. Critics and audience members alike had polarizing reactions to this film. So coming from the perspective of someone who was in awe of this movie, I have to remind you that like with all things in life, you could watch Suspiria and hate everything I loved about it. It's an artistically inclined, mesmerizing film. For one, it's visually stunning, starting from its careful shot composition all the way to its bleak and depressing muted color palette. And for a film primarily about witches and witchcraft, the costume design and makeup in this film is appropriately spellbinding. It's hard not to be captivated by the beguiling and haunting looks each character is molded with. But where Suspiria shines most is its vigorously hypnotic choreography that often results in these high-energy, ritualistic dance performances. And all these elements combined create a sinister, dark, disturbing, and intense vibe that permeates the entire film. Its atmosphere is one of dread, one where the film itself feels evil at its core. And when you sprinkle on horrifying, memorable imagery into this vile concoction of wickedness, you have a bewitching film worth every moment of your time. And without giving too many spoilers, Suspiria follows Dakota Johnson's character Susie in her journey to be admitted to a dance academy in West Berlin. The dance academy, however, is secretly controlled by a coven of witches, though none of the dancers are aware of the evil that lurks around them. They only know that a fellow sister has gone missing from the academy just shortly before Susie's arrival. Susie, once admitted, quickly befriends Sarah, who's played by Mia Goth. Sarah is instantly supportive of Susie's talents and helps Susie transition into the Marco's Dance Academy lifestyle. She tells her of the missing girl, the endless nightmares, and the school's secrets, but ultimately also of the joy, the camaraderie, and the friendship of this beautiful sisterhood between dancers. Sarah often lends Susie dresses and a listening ear, and it's clear that she's a kind and gentle soul that's perhaps a little too curious about what might really be going on at the Marco's Dance Academy. But before I say more about the film, I'd like to take us aside here for a moment to mention that a lot of Mia Goth's appeal is that she plays fun characters, and I think Sarah Sims is no different. Sarah is fun, enthusiastic, and supportive, and as we've already established, Mia's excellent at giving off a playful vibe. It's a part of her that she uses so well in horror films, whether that's to establish a sense of innocence, or whether that's to mask a dark and twisted side of herself. It's not Mia's playfulness, however, that makes her performance in Suspiria so strong and memorable. As always, Mia's emotional control is second to none. She's able to express terror and worry just as easily as happiness and peace. I fully believe when Sarah is frantic and scared. You can just see it in the way that Mia manipulates her face. And it's not just her face either. There's a certain physicality to this film that Mia just nails perfectly. When she's excited, her limbs are light, airy, and graceful. When she's afraid, there's a harsh and urgent gravity to her movements. When she's panicked, it's like she loses control of everything, and there's only chaos left in her body. Mia Goth gives such a visceral performance in this film. Her screams are powerful shrills that stick with you long after those scenes are over. And I think that's why I feel like Suspiria is where Mia's horror renaissance really began. Screams are a defining feature of horror icons. That's why we have the term Scream Queen, and that's why we look at certain horror performances as legendary when a Scream Queen is involved in it. Jamie Lee Curtis exploded onto the scene as Laurie Strode in John Carpenter's Halloween. Linda Blair, similarly, is still remembered as the iconic Regan McNeil in 1973's The Exorcist. Now, am I saying that people 30 years from now are gonna look back at Mia Goth's performance as Sarah Sims and say that this was the role that made her into such a memorable horror icon? Not necessarily. But we'll work our way up there. For now, let's move on to our next film and follow along on Mia's journey to becoming the star she is.
Always alone, alone and blue. I've got no one to share my troubles to, no one to care.
High Life is a science fiction film with an intriguing, albeit flawed, premise that focuses on death row inmates who are sent on a space expedition towards a black hole. On this mission, the criminals are subjected to several scientific experiments, the primary one being the ship doctor's goal to create a child through artificial insemination, since sexual activity is prohibited between inmates. Robert Pattinson plays Monty, a man who pledges celibacy and is later responsible for a young baby after everyone else on board the ship dies. Which isn't a spoiler, by the way. The film is presented through a non-linear narrative, and the movie pretty much begins with Monty in isolation as he deals with this newfound responsibility. Anyway, Mia Goth plays Boise, a very violent, aggressive character who's actually quite reminiscent of her later roles. Whereas Mia's past roles mask a lot of her aggression and unhinged behavior, High Life puts that aggression at the forefront. And I think this decision helps highlight the core of what draws people to Mia Goth. She has an uncanny taste for selecting projects in which she's able to play fun and memorable characters, and Boise is once again one of them. Her unique style and identity helps sell the rough upbringing her character went through, as her look perfectly fits Boise's impetuous nature. Mia Goth knows how to play vulnerable characters. Her ability to viscerally react to things, combined with her ability to capture intense emotional expressions, is a talent that really accentuates her character's harsh vulnerabilities. And while High Life doesn't entirely execute its interesting premise to its fullest extent, having talented actors such as Mia Goth and Robert Pattinson helps elevate its weakest points by leaving you with a memorable experience. Because contrary to how many might view High Life as a vapid, incoherent, slow art house film, I found myself appreciative of the good aspects this film did have. And perhaps that's just the way I view art in general, the good I can take out of it. I enjoyed the dread, discomfort, and hopelessness this movie made me feel, and Mia Goth played a large part in that. Because even when a movie is hit or miss, you can expect Mia Goth to give it her all. And as we'll see in these remaining 6 films, she most definitely gives it her all.
And if she does but knit a pair of garters, one hears of nothing else for a whole month. It is rubber mud.
Emma is a romantic comedy period film based on Jane Austen's 1815 novel of the same name. Emma, much like Austen's other works, explores the life and relationships of genteel women during Regency-era England, though Emma is a work that's more satirical and comedic in nature. Not quite as funny as Northanger Abbey, mind you, but still hilarious and every bit as clever as all of Austen's other works. And while 2020's Emma isn't a perfect one-to-one adaptation of the novel, I personally adored this interpretation. It's a visually stunning, beautifully shot film with a fitting soundtrack and exquisite costume design. Not to mention its stacked cast of wonderful and hilarious performances. This was also the very last movie I watched in theaters before the pandemic, so I have a bit of an affinity for this film's gentle aesthetic and style that probably colors my view of this movie a little too much. When quarantine happened, this movie was everything the world was not. That isn't to say that Emma is some masterpiece of peaceful and serene imagery or anything, but it reminds me of a time before everything went to shit. Nevertheless, outside of my pre-COVID nostalgia, I do genuinely believe that Emma is a worthwhile watch. The movie follows Anya Taylor-Joy as the titular Emma Woodhouse, a rich and influential young woman who spends her time meddling in the romantic lives of the people around her. Emma's reckless matchmaking antics are often criticized by Mr. Knightley, her close friend, brother-in-law, and neighbor. He warns her that her immaturity can and will hurt other people, especially considering how much stock those people put into her opinions because of her social status. One such person manipulated by Emma is none other than Harriet Smith, played by Mia Goth. Harriet is the unclaimed daughter of 2 unknown parents, but because her education is paid for, Emma supposes that Harriet's father must be a rich gentleman. Emma and Harriet soon become close friends, with Emma quickly taking charge of the latter's love life. She treats Harriet a little bit like a pet project, but the two do have a caring relationship at their core. In the novel, Harriet is a character that's quite gentle and sweet, but also naive and impressionable. And I believe that Mia Goth's performance perfectly nails this aspect about Harriet. Just like her performance as Sarah in Suspiria, I think Mia Goth is incredible at playing characters that are believably charming and friendly. Her flamboyant, light-hearted energy doesn't just work to strengthen her horror performances by masking unhinged evil. It can also be used in contexts like Emma, where that kind-hearted warmth is the key to her character as opposed to what it's hiding. Harriet's frantic, childlike excitement, contrasted to Emma's controlled poise, perfectly portrays the clear power dynamic Emma holds over her in their relationship. A power dynamic that's central to the theme of the story and its depiction of social class. I need not keep repeating myself of Mia's excellent capabilities of emotional expression, but I do suppose it should once again be mentioned in the context of this film, as it really defines and strengthens Harriet's character in this film adaptation. Mia's talent for blatant expressiveness lays bare all of Harriet's vulnerabilities. Her tumultuous relationship with Emma, her changing affections as manipulated by Emma, and ultimately, how she views her place in this world as a woman with an uncertain path. Emma is a film that's most unlike the rest of Mia Goth's filmography, and that's why I think it's one of the most important to talk about. Mia is known for and is popular for her horror films, and this very popularity explains why she's in a lot of them in the first place. Actors often get criticized for being typecast into a certain role, but I do want to emphasize that this doesn't mean that those actors are incapable of success in other roles. It just means those actors are able to leverage that strength to build their body of work. Talented actors can deviate from that formula whenever they wish, and I think Emma fits that criteria perfectly for Mia. Because despite this video being about Mia's rise to horror stardom, I want viewers to think of her as more than just her status as a horror icon. This video, at its core, is more about how Mia's talents enabled her to get there. And I can't think of anything better than Emma to contextualize the rest of her career's success. Because what it reveals about her is something I found quite relevant to her latest triumphs in horror. Emma, much like Mia Goth's most successful films, is a film filled with chaotic humor. Mia's comedic timing is excellent in this, and I think it matches Mia's branding quite well with how darkly humorous a lot of her roles have ended up being. Emma is a sneak peek into that absurd, hilarious, and exaggerated behavior Mia Goth has now become known for. Behavior we'll most definitely be seeing quite soon. So let us continue making our way to those films, and let us examine all the little things she picks up along the way to that success.
You're going back to the kitchen. You don't need to worry about me, Marcia. I know what to do. After everything I've given you... What have you given me? I made you into a hero. You made me into a psychopath. It's the same thing! You won't be winning, Anna.
Mayday is an obscure action drama film that's somehow needlessly marred in misguided controversy. Since the basic premise of the movie is a bit of a girl boss fantasy, it's no surprise that it caught the attention of clueless men's rights radicals that purposefully misconstrue the film's plot for the purposes of justifying their beliefs. If you were born with 2 brain cells, you might think this is a misandrous film made by a toxic feminist. But I'd like to dispel that notion and present this movie in a more accurate light. For context, Mayday follows Grace Van Patten's character Anna, a hotel worker that continually gets abused by the harsh head waiter of her workplace. After a particularly bad incident of abuse, Anna crawls into an oven and finds herself in an alternate world with no memories. She's greeted by Mia Goth's character Marcia, a seemingly friendly woman who I've seen described as Peter Pan-like, which is a description I wholeheartedly agree with. This fantastical world is similar to Neverland in many ways. It's an imaginary island that appears to exist outside time and space, and it represents escapism for its main character. Marcia is this world's Peter Pan, though instead of leading children on adventures, she drafts and guides women into a violent war against men. If we were to stop here, perhaps it does sound like Mayday is a film that promotes misandry and violence towards men. But that's not at all what the plot leads you to believe. While Mayday's fantasy world recognizes this imaginary space as a chance for women to literally fight back against male trauma and violence, it does not in any way suggest that Marcia is the hero for her methodologies. Marcia is depicted as a cruel, selfish villain who uses her fellow women at arms to accomplish her bloodthirsty agenda. And she does this without regard for who these men actually are or what they might have done. And Anna understands the error in this black and white thinking fairly early on in the film, suggesting that some men are actually on their side or at the very least could be spared. She absolutely doesn't forget that violent, cruel men exist, because they absolutely do. But she also discovers that there are different kinds of men in her life too. She finds that there are some who hold control over her, some that she has control over herself, some who are indifferent yet unwitting participants in perpetuating a patriarchal society, and some who are active allies and friends. Because Mayday, at its heart, is about a young woman dealing with her trauma and exploring how to deal with masculine abuse. And who else would you want on your side but a fierce Mia Goth to empower you? But again, what Marcia does is equally as exploitative as the men in Anna's life, as she uses this vulnerable woman's rage to wage a violent war that may only continue rather than solve the issue. Of course, this is all a very simplified take on a more complicated discussion this film generates. There is way too much nuance about this topic to be debated on in a fucking Mia Goth video. So I'll just say that it should be acknowledged that Mayday is careful in handling its sensitive subject matter. It might even be a little too careful, to be honest with you. But its commitment to portraying innocent, reasonable, thoughtful, and empathetic people in the conflict between men and women is a decision that really emphasizes Anna's peaceful, self-reflective journey in this film rather than her self-destructiveness. And Mayday's fairly lukewarm feminist takes are in no way deserving of any outrage. Perhaps it's a testament to Mia Goth's talent that she can rile up some haters into thinking this is an anti-men film purely by her villainous portrayal. But reactionaries were going to hate this movie no matter what. Regardless, I give Mia credit for making Marcia into the semi-detestable character she is, and even more credit for making her motivations believable and almost justifiable. This is where Mia's talent for masking barely containable rage once again comes in handy. You don't know what Marcia's trauma is, but you can certainly believe that it's made her into the angry, violent woman she's become. And as we draw closer to X and Pearl, Mayday is yet another sneak peek into that infamous energy that Mia Goth fans love. That sinister, unhinged soul lurking behind an innocent, playful mask. With 4 films left to go, let's take a look at one last curveball. One that relies not on Mia's expressive face, but her expressive voice.
Mama, Isabel, she's getting tired. Hmm? That's nice, Mabel.
Come on, Isabel. Good night, Mama. Good night, Papa.
Good night, Mabel.
Night-night.
The House is a stop-motion, animated anthology film with elements of light horror and drama. We're particularly interested in the first story in this anthology since it's the one that stars Mia Goth. But seeing as this is a rather complex film to talk about, I'll be referencing the other 2 stories as needed. And the easiest way for me to describe this entire collection is that it's an anthology about decadence. The idea that an excessive overindulgence in luxury or materialism leads to moral decline and unhappiness. Since the house is a bit esoteric and reliant on enigmatic metaphors, I have to limit my direct analysis for the purposes of saving time. I can't dissect every scene, so you'll just have to trust my judgment and understand that this small overview is just one of many interpretations. Each of the 3 stories in the house depicts working class folk subjected to what is effectively the evil puppetry of capitalism and its illusory allure of wealth. Because as we'll soon see in this first story titled, "And Heard Within, a Lie is Spun," The house exposes how the upper class manipulates the working class into thinking that wealth, and the supposed happiness that comes from it, is possible from hard, laborious work. For a bit of context, this first story follows Mia Goth's character Mabel, a 9-year-old girl who lives in poverty with her father Raymond, her mother Penny, and her baby sister Isabel. One day, a wealthy architect known as Mr. Van Schoenbeek gives them a luxurious home for free, with his only stipulation being that they move into the house and abandon their old, humble way of living. At first glance, this detail makes it seem like this story isn't about capitalism at all. After all, Mabel's family does get a house for free. But what this house represents is what's important. It's about the allure and dream of wealth, not that Mabel's family is actually wealthy. Once they move in, the construction workers continue to endlessly modify the home, and Raymond soon becomes obsessed with the fireplace, dragging up all his old wooden possessions to burn as firewood. Likewise, Penny becomes obsessed with the sewing machine and spends all of her waking hours sewing curtains. By the end of the story, Raymond and Penny turn into furniture, Raymond morphing into a chair, and Penny transforming into the very drapes she was sewing. It's a conclusion that shows how the wealthy exploit the labor of the working class, so much so that the working class literally turns into the products of their labor. It's quite honestly a sad story, yet at the same time, a hauntingly beautiful one as well. And while its unique aesthetic and eerie stop-motion sequences serve as the foundation for this story's somber and creepy vibe, I think Mia Goth's performance as Mabel is truly what gives it its ethereal nature. We've talked all throughout this video about how emotionally expressive her face is, but we've talked very little about how she uses her voice in that matter too. In the house, Mia takes a very subdued approach to the pitch, cadence, and tone of Mabel's voice. There's a flare of softness and melancholy in each of her spoken words, a flare that helps characterize Mabel as an innocent yet downtrodden child whose life has given her a heavy and serious heart. Such a sorrowful voice helps set the gloomy mood and atmosphere of the film. And thematically speaking, Mabel's muted behavior is reflective of her childlike disinterest in the pursuit of wealth. Though that isn't to say that there isn't disappointment and worry in Mabel's voice during the film's most crucial turns, which Mia handles with just enough restraint to accurately reflect the soft-spoken child that Mabel is. As a whole, Mia Goth's voice and performance as Mabel is just so otherworldly. I don't listen to ASMR, but this segment of the house may very well be the closest thing to it. There's a trance-like appeal to Mia's line delivery, and the way it perfectly matches the dark, oppressive vibe of this film is a reminder of how suited she is for horror performances that can go from quiet and subdued to harsh and chilling. And in these final 3 films, we'll see just how Mia Goth twists that soft innocence into impulsive, abrupt terror. Let us finally see a horror icon in full force.
Everybody's waiting.
You're a fucking sex symbol.
X is a slasher movie that pays homage to old horror exploitation films, and although it is equally horrifying as it is deranged, it's also quite funny and thought-provoking beyond its moments of terror. And personally, I love this movie. So much so that I've already made a video about it. and I'm probably going to end up repeating a lot of the same things I've said about it already. But it's worth repeating those things, as X is truly a great film with so many fun sequences. I could go on and on about its masterful cinematography, its eerie yet captivating rural style and design, its haunting soundtrack reminiscent of old art house horror, or even its brilliant meta-commentary. But what I love most about X is its somber existential themes about what it's like to get older. For context, X follows a group of young filmmakers and actors who set out to make an adult film on a rural Texas farm. Because of how explicit the film is, the group purposefully hides what they're doing from the elderly couple who own the farm. But it soon becomes clear that the elderly couple is not a normal or friendly pair. At almost every moment, they express their dislike of the young filmmakers in the harshest of tones. And their hatred revolves around one central reason: generational divide. Because to the elderly couple, the young filmmakers represent everything they despise: change. Not just change to the values of society, but change to who they are as people because of the passage of time. In particular, the grandma character Pearl, who's surprisingly played by Mia Goth, mourns the loss of her beauty and wistfully tries to recapture the sex appeal that once gave her self-worth. X, at its core, makes you contemplate the consequences of aging and urges you to think about what it's like to lose everything you once had. Don't get me wrong, X is a grotesque horror movie through and through, but I'll always appreciate how the film gives you breathing room to contemplate its existential sorrow. Because despite Pearl's evil, Mia Goth's anguished and sympathetic performance has you empathize with Pearl's pain. Pearl isn't just deranged and impulsively violent. She's also sad and pensive, and it's to Mia Goth's credit that she's able to express Pearl's bitter weakness even through a thick layer of extensive prosthetic makeup. That's why talking about the house prior to this film was so important. There's so much sinister depth to Pearl's intonation in contrast to the soft innocence of Mabel in the house that it's easy to forget that Pearl was even played by Mia. There's so much pent-up anger, deep-seated hatred, and contempt in Pearl's voice, and it's made all the much more heartbreaking when you see that she draws that rage from such a sad and painful place. But it's not just Pearl who's a force to be reckoned with, it's Maxine too, who's also played by Mia Goth. It cannot be understated how difficult it is to act against yourself, and I respect Mia's ability to play the psychotic Pearl and the bold Maxine at the same time. And for this being Mia Goth's first true starring role as the primary protagonist, it's only fitting that she's also the primary antagonist as well. Because of this, you truly feel her presence all throughout this movie. And I hate to reference this, but she really feels like a star. Mia gives X her all, and as we've dissected her talents in these previous 9 films, you can really see how those talents have come to shine in this pivotal role. There's so much intensity to Pearl and Maxine Minx. Her mannerisms as Maxine are just so spot on. She's hesitant, nervous, and fearful, but savage when she needs to be. And it's Mia's gift for emotional expression that allows her to exude that energy. Because there's ferocity in Maxine's eyes. You can sense her confidence even though it's peppered with self-doubt. And Mia's micro-expressions allow her to show that kind of emotional depth in conjunction with those more powerful, intense feelings. But the recipe for a memorable character is more than just their emotions. It probably helps that Maxine as a character is a bit of a self-assured girl boss, with characters mentioning her as having that X factor. She's fun to root for, and I think that's a major part of what creates horror icons. We want Maxine to succeed, and strong, charismatic characters who clash well against their villains are memorable at their core. And come on, you know you've made it when people start cosplaying as your character on Halloween. There's no better way to say iconic than that. And this extends to Mia's role as Pearl in the prequel as well. But before I move on to Pearl, I do want to make the delineation that when I say horror icon, I don't necessarily mean that these movies are mega million box office hits. Rather, I say horror icon in reference to characters who are iconic and memorable in this specific genre and niche. And as much as I've gassed up Maxine, I think it very well might be Pearl who truly propelled Mia Goth to absolute stardom. So let's see Pearl in her youth, and let's see just why so many people are clamoring about Mia Goth today.
Come on, I'm sorry. It's time to go.
No, I'm a star!
Come on.
Please, I'm a star! Please, somebody help
Pearl is a horror film released as a prequel to the aforementioned X. It serves as the origin story to the titular character Pearl, whose psychopathic tendencies clash with her dreams of stardom. The film's Technicolor aesthetic is described by director Ty West as a demented Disney movie, and I would agree with his characterization of Pearl's style. Its aesthetic influence is evocative of musical fantasies such as The Wizard of Oz and Mary Poppins, two fairly innocuous and innocent films that are associated with more harmless and gentle imagery. This creates a jarring contrast between the innocent, vibrant style and the harsh violence of the film, and it's reflective of Pearl's character. She's someone with a playful, cheery mood, but within her is an unhinged darkness ready to strike. And she's absolutely twisted. To give a little bit more context, the movie follows a young woman named Pearl who lives on her family's farm during the 1918 flu pandemic. Her husband, Howard, serves in World War I, leaving Pearl home alone with her paralyzed father and her controlling mother who vastly disapproves of Pearl's dreams of becoming a tiller girl. Pearl's sister-in-law, Mitzi, tells her of a dance audition coming to town, and with the encouragement of a local projectionist, Pearl makes it her goal to pursue stardom and take her shot at finally leaving her dull farm life. But on this journey, there are clear signs that point to Pearl's mental illness, and the film explores how she navigates those violent tendencies to one day turn into the Pearl we know from X. Pearl is a story that examines life on the fringes, and in Pearl's words, what it's like to be missing something that other people have. Her life shows what happens when you're different or non-conforming to society's standards. Pearl wishes to break free from the painful, constrictive duty that women have to their household and their men, something that the bohemian projectionist she meets can personally get away with as a man and who wrongfully claims would be easy for her. Because Pearl isn't just held back by her illness. Familial abuse, beauty standards, gender roles, poverty, a worldwide pandemic, and lack of mental health care all exacerbate her illness and pain and rage. But I do want to mention that talking about Pearl's themes can be a bit tricky, because we have to remember that as lovable as Pearl's nonsensical and flamboyant attitude is, she's still a sadistic villain with irredeemable acts of violence. But she's fun, she serves looks, and we love her. And that's because of how charming and vulnerable Mia Goth plays her. Mia straddles the line between playful innocence and unhinged madness, and her unstable, impulsive mannerisms are a complete joy to watch. It's precisely this wild instability that makes Pearl such an iconic horror character. Her passionate, emotional explosions are memorable and often quite ridiculous in an amusing way. It's not that she's being played for laughs though, as Mia Goth's performance as Pearl is actually quite sincere. But Pearl as a character can get so absurd that you can't help but bask in the hilarity of her crazy, misguided behaviors. But don't let that fool you into thinking that Pearl is a film solely focused on poking fun at Pearl's irrational thought process. Because at Pearl's core is a sad, vulnerable woman who simply wants a better life. And Mia portrays this misery perfectly. Her intense and moving monologue at the end of the movie is a masterfully performed portrayal of sorrow blended with evil. You can just feel the agony in Pearl's heart, and you can feel this pain all throughout the film. That's what makes Mia Goth such a horror icon for this movie. Her earnestness as Pearl is so well done. Because while it's easy to remember the film's horrifying violence and Mia Goth's fun, emotional outbursts, it's Mia's deep characterization of Pearl that turns her into an iconic villain that helps define A24's best. But as I've alluded to all throughout this video, Mia Goth's incredible talent can turn any role into an iconic character. So let's see her in one last final performance, and let me remind you why Mia Goth is the queen of horror.
Come on, James! What are you doing in there, James? Huh? Where do you think you're going, you little baby?
Infinity Pool is a surreal, sci-fi horror film that I'm probably a bit too biased about ever since I met the writer and director Brandon Cronenberg. Not only did I take a picture with him, but the dude also took a picture of my Infinity Pool Mia Goth shirt. Like, there's seriously a picture of me on this man's phone out there. If his iCloud ever gets leaked, you best believe I'll be on there. But forget bias. This whole video is biased anyway. Infinity Pool is legitimately a great film, if not a bit polarizing, much like most horror movies. And like all the films we've discussed today, Infinity Pool deserves so much more time than I'm dedicating to it. Because it's impossible to condense and capture every abstract theme and symbol in such a short overview. It takes away from the meaning and significance of the work. But I'll do my best to do this film justice, because it really is one of Mia Goth's best. Infinity Pool follows Alexander Skarsgård's character James, a struggling writer who takes a trip with his wife Em to a tourist resort in the fictional country of ΝÄω𝞀繫, a rather exotic and dangerous place with a mysterious, dark culture. There, the two meet Mia Goth's character Gabby and her husband Albin, who both invite the two to dinner that night and to a nice picnic outing the next day, even though guests aren't supposed to leave the resort. They spend the day sunbathing and drinking, and on a drunken drive on the way back to the resort, James accidentally runs over and kills a local man. Gabby and Albin urge James and Em not to call the police, informing them of the brutal corruption from the ΝÄω𝞀繫 authorities. However, the police show up at James and Em's door the next morning anyway. The lead police detective informs James that the penalty for his crime is execution. But fortunately for him, the ΝÄω𝞀繫 offers an alternative method of justice for criminals. For a large fee, James can be cloned and have his duplicate killed in his stead. Luckily, his wife Em is rich, so she pays for the exorbitant fee and the two are forced to watch the clone's execution, after which the clone's cremated remains are given to James in an urn. Upon their return to the resort, James extends his stay by a week, and Gabby shortly thereafter introduces him to a group of tourists who have previously went through a similar experience as James. Each year, they return to ＮÄ고𝞀齢to commit terrible crimes and watch their doubles get executed. And this time, they encourage James into joining them on this year's journey of depravity. Thematically speaking, it's a multi-layered film that gets harder to understand the deeper you try to dig into it. On a basic level, there are themes of how tourism destructively exploits cultures and communities. It's a bit of a satire on upper middle class privilege and the blatant disregard of quote-unquote exotic cultures they hypocritically describe as primitive or brutal. But as you really look deeper into the movie, you'll find that there are more character-centric themes revolving around ego death and how we as people change fundamentally through the confrontation of hardship. Through this ego death, we are essentially reborn, and imagery in the film points to this. But in the interest of time, let's just say that one image may involve breastfeeding. Despite that rebirth, however, the past remains with us, as symbolized by the cremation urn holding James's double. As other characters refer to him, he's transformed. And if we read the film as such, then these ignorant tourists who have the privilege to come here each year to renew themselves serve as an extra layer of satire. They don't come out as new, reborn people in the same vein that James does, but rather as ignorant Westerners who continue to exploit the ＮÄ고𝞀ljans for their own benefit. At НÄ고𝞀ljans, their real identity comes out, not a new one. They're violent, corrupt, shameless, and dishonest, and they always have been. It simply gets masked away the moment they return home. It's a shallow rebirth for shallow people. It's just like real life. Rich tourists gentrify countries all the time to find themselves at the expense of the locals. Of course, that isn't to say that all tourism is necessarily bad or disrespectful, as this is obviously once again a much more complicated and nuanced topic too substantive for a Mia Goth video, so we'll leave it at that. I just wanted to paint the picture that Infinity Pool has such an oppressive, well thought out atmosphere filled with abhorrent characters ripe for Mia Goth to bounce off of. It's the perfect environment for Mia to go all out in a fit of sociopathic rage. And she does, in fact, nail an absolutely fun, memorable, and deranged performance. Gabby Bauer is an intense force to reckon with. She's such a chaotic agent of evil that can be funny in the same way Pearl is, but also terrifying with how they both straddle the line between sane innocence and incomprehensible rage. Gabby is lackadaisical about her evil, further cementing the notion that she's a rich, reckless tourist. And Mia pulls off those apathetic mannerisms to perfection. And that's what makes Gabby so scary. She's someone who initially seems harmless, loving, and charming, but is secretly a dangerous, angry, and impulsive sociopath. Mia is incredible at portraying that sudden emotional shift. We know that by now. In the case of Gabby Bauer, you can just watch her eyes switch from friendly and welcoming to dark, soulless, and empty. Mia's delivery of Gabby's hurtful words is caustic, biting, and grating. And when she's mad, you can just see her entire body quivering in pure, unadulterated anger. It's Mia Goth at her best. And how she elevates this film is just so mesmerizing. Without her, I don't think it would be as easy to buy into Gabby's tantalizing pull towards degeneracy. Because the vile way Mia twists her charm is almost hypnotic. We want to watch her lead James down a dark path with her motley crew of miscreants. She's honestly that charismatic. And the effect leaves us like voyeurs entranced with a fucked up situation. Even the cinematography and direction have us feeling this way with long, lingering shots and uncomfortable close-ups. It's just so much fun to watch Mia perform. And that's basically what we did for the past 11 films, and now 12 with Infinity Pool. But before I close out this video, I do have some final words to wrap up the remaining pieces of what makes Mia Goth the horror icon she is. And as we put those last puzzle pieces together, I want us to think, where exactly does she go from here? I think I know. If you've made it through this entire video, you don't need me to tell you again that Mia Goth is a brilliant actress and horror icon. It's a given at this point. But I want to emphasize that Mia Goth is not alone in her talents, and that the work of many others helps shape her memorable roles and performances. Because films are never about the work of just one person. They're also about the meticulous, excruciating, and well thought out work hundreds of people contribute to their creation. I cannot understate the talent on all of these projects, and I'd like to respect all of the work that they put into these movies. Every writer, actor, director, cinematographer, editor, costume designer, makeup artist, and so much more put all their passion and energy into shaping a beautiful piece of art meant to make us feel something. And without their contributions, Mia's characters wouldn't be the same. She may be the backbone to her excellent performances, but I want you to remember everyone else who helped to make that happen. And I'm sure that's something she would wholeheartedly agree with. And as we look forward past this point, I want you to keep in mind that this video is just barely scratching the surface of an unfinished journey in Mia's rise to stardom. Because the ride isn't over for her yet, not even close. Not to jinx her or anything, but I foresee a long, storied, and well-deserved career coming for her. I just hope she gets all the recognition she's earned. And if you'd like to see me review Maxine and other future Mia Goth projects, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below so I know that these long videos are worth pursuing. But we've come to the end now. If you haven't already, please consider watching a Mia Goth film. After all, you sat through this nearly hour-and-a-half long video anyway. She's worth your time. If you enjoyed this video essay, don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content similar to this. I make videos about all things writing related. I'd also like to thank my patron, Edith Lopez Torres, for helping make this video happen. If you'd like to support me further, please check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link down in the description below. And if you've got some time, check out some of my other videos too. I really appreciate you watching this one. And to everyone who made it to the end here, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.